You know, it's funny when you look back, you tell it differently. At the beginning of my documentary, I said everything that you're going to hear is a lie. Because you know, when you tell a story about your life, it's not the way you lived it. So you know, once you give it a shape, it's not the way it was. It's you know, it's because your life was only one damn thing after the other. But you know, I was born in Brooklyn from very with a father who came from a German background. They were both born here, but he wasn't educated. She went through high school. There were four of us. She, there were four of us, and I was the oldest, and then there were twins, a girl and a boy, and then my youngest sister, who who I always thought was my child, and she, of the four of us, she also became an academic, but a social worker, and she taught social work at Columbia. But anyway, I I grew up. My father sent us all, and then he never had enough money to send the others to an Episcopalian school, so I would assimilate, you know, and so I still know Episcopalian hymns better than I could a whole batch of Episcopalian. But my brother and sisters went to public school, although my younger sister came to the private school near the end. But my best friend couldn't invite me home because her grandma didn't like Jews, you know. And when it was time to graduate, the principal said, "It's such a shame you're Jewish." She said, "I could get you a scholarship to Mount Holyoke." And I remember I apologized, and I'm so ashamed that I apologized. I should have hit her in the face, you know. But anyway, I went to Barnard because the quota there was a quota system because it was larger, and then the other thing was I was supposed to be the valedictorian, but they decided to have the graduation in a Methodist church, so I couldn't be the, you know, they're not terrible things, but I think it did give me a kind of being an outsider, feeling of being an outsider. Although, I mean, I didn't suffer like they would in Europe or anything. And the other thing I remember, I would visit my friends around there, and a lot of them were horseback riders. There was a stable that didn't take Jews, but my brother used to groom in there. But I thought if you were to be an acceptable Christian person, you had to have ribbons over the fireplace, red and blue, you know, for horseback riding. It's so funny, the ideas you get. So anyway, I did go to Barnard, and I really didn't like it. When I think back now, it was so, I don't know, so arbitrary and so formal and nothing like we do now. I mean, nothing like involving the student in the learning process. And then in 3.5 years, I thought, oh, I had enough of this, and I had enough points. Used to get honor points, so I eloped. I wanted to get away from home, and the best way to do that was to elope. So I was very sort of radical then, and we were going to a cause party or something. So I get all gussied up in evening dress, and because I think I was 19, so I couldn't have a regular marriage. So we stopped at a roadside rabbi, like, you know, and he married us. And they have, what do they call, like a chuppah, they call it. It's like an awning. He had a collapsible one. I always remember he put it up. So we were married, and our friends were witnesses. That we went to the dance, and we stayed at the Hotel Commodore. And in the morning, he had to call his service. And he found out he had to go to Long Beach, out of Long Island, take on a medical. And here I am, and I remembered I forgot to bring any other clothes. So I'm there in my evening dress. So I had to call my mother. So my mother came and picked me up. I think she was sort of relieved in a way. And then when I got home, I remember my father, who was my main love in life and my authority, he's standing at the window, and when he got angry, he had a muscle, went like this. So he turns around, he says, I still can't make sense of it. He says, the way of the pioneer is hard. I remember it's nonsense, Sometimes when people are watching my documentary, I said, I adored my father. He came out with these platitudes, and he would take me for walks. I said, and I didn't realize he was crazy. And everybody laughs like they had some experiences, many women had that special relation with their fathers. And they say, even though, I think he was smart, he built up a good business, in artificial pearls, and it went up and down over the years. But we had a house he built, so it was a privileged kind of life. I have to say that. But I was ashamed to know anything he didn't know, So and he was sort of scornful about college and university people and experts, and they didn't encourage me to go to college at all, because so I went to Barnard, and I came home every night. I didn't, and it was much cheaper, of course, and then when I got out of Barnard and got married, I went to the New School, I remember. And I took some course, and I wrote a paper that they thought was too radical, so they withdrew they didn't give me my degree. So and then I had a baby, and my husband was a doctor, so I was doing taking the tests in the doctor's office. In those days, for an office visit, you paid $2. And for a home visit, you paid $5. So it was hard, And I remember holding the baby and crossing the waiting room. And so the one thing I did, I was miserable, really. I thought I missed everything. I missed living in the village, and I missed getting drunk, and I missed all the wonderful things that artists and writers had, And then so once a week, I guess, I got off, and I went to the public library, and I wrote a very long book, a novel, and it was called The Axe to the Root, and it was about the time of the French Revolution and the Alien and Sedition Acts. And now I realize I did very good research. I went to Philadelphia, and I looked up the minutes of the Democratic Society, the Philosophic Society. So then I finished the book, and an old lover used to meet me at the library for lunch, and he knew a literary agent, so they sent it to something in Brown in New York, and they sent it to their Boston office. They liked it, but a book almost the same period came out at the same time. And in the one in Little Brown and Company, they took an option on it, of all things. When I got it back, I thought it was like getting your term paper returned. So I felt, so I put it away. I didn't ever try fiction anymore. So and then I thought I wanted to go to school, and I guess Linda was 6 or 7. So I wrote to all the colleges. I said, I want to be a special student, but I only have one requirement. The courses have to be between 10 and 2, because I take my kid and then pick her up at 2. So then I decided she had gone to public school in Queens, and the teacher said, uh, I said, you know, she's having trouble. We had a divorce. She's nauseous all the time. And teacher said, if she were mine, I'd take a baseball bat to her. So I thought, out she comes. And I took her back to her school in Brooklyn, you know, so it was a private school, little private school. So that was, so I had to get her there. Then, so I thought, I could really go to school. So that's why I wrote to all these, and then one of them was NYU, and it was a course that met twice a week, 8 points from 10 to 2. So I could, you know, combine Linda and that's how I didn't mean to get into education, but the courses were philosophy and history of education. And you know, at the beginning I taught from the notes from the professors, you know, because we would have huge classes there. So I was all of a sudden teaching, like the summer classes where they get 150 students from the South. And so then I decided I might as well get a doctorate here because I get it cheap because I was teaching there. So I did, and then I tried to get a job, and first of all, the philosophy that was becoming fashionable, was analytic philosophy, British philosophy, language philosophy, and I was an existentialist, I was interested in that kind of philosophy, and nothing could have been more outside so it was hard, but then finally I got a job in Montclair, which is in New Jersey, and not a small trip from Forest Hills where I lived, and I had the kid, and it was hard, but you took what you could get then, because there weren't many women in philosophy, but what I taught was world literature, and I'd never taken a course in English because I was like excused. I liked books, and I thought they'd spoil it for me with the way they were teaching at Barnard. So I majored in history, and so all of a sudden, I learned more in that year, I think, than ever in my life, because they said world literature, the curriculum was made in Trenton, the capital of New Jersey, and it said world literature from the scriptures to Shakespeare. So first I thought, how could you let a New Jersey population go out without knowing Shakespeare? So I really had to study both scriptures, because you couldn't teach just the St. James version to Catholic kids, so we had to use the Douay version and the St. James version, and then Donne and all right through, and I loved it. But I read all the critics, and then I shifted over. I wasn't a feminist, but my last course was from Hamlet to Moby Dick. It was a theme of the hero, and because I didn't want to stop at Shakespeare. And then after that, I didn't really want to stay because my husband didn't want to anyway. But for example, the faculty, it does sound funny now, the faculty would have lunch in a club that didn't admit Jews. I think they'd admit you for lunch, but and the golf club wasn't taking Jews. It's very different now. I think Montclair's mostly Jewish, but at that time, and I told my husband we couldn't do that. And so I keep trying to talk about the difference between schooling and education. Education helps individuals grow and become, and schooling makes them proper servants of the technocratic society. But I want people to be angry. When we set up a school, and then we had to be interviewed by the Department of Education downtown. So they asked me, what do you expect of your children when you graduate? I said, well, I hope they're critical thinkers, and I hope they love the arts. and I hope they're capable of outrage. I was interested in so many disciplines, weaving it together, like the public and its problem, the public school and the private. That still interests me. You know, the history of the public school and the connection with the cultural history and the contrast between, like among things, I used to say that educators never talked about money, even though education was about money. But American writers always talked about money, like in Moby Dick. Ahab says cash, I cash, you know, and Daisy's voice sounded like money, you know, and it's so interesting to me that you know, they wouldn't mention money, not if you're Horace Mann or John Dewey. So I was, and then I guess in I think it's in the Release of Imagination, maybe another one. That, you know, I still brought in some history and wanted to connect it with the arts and with education. And so I kept wanting to go, maybe because Karen emphasizes my radicalism. I didn't want to give up the radicalism just to talk about art. So it must be that too, to talk about social issues. That's why I admire Marcuse. He managed to do it all without cheating us. You know, but I'm no Marcuse, but that, I guess that's, I can't stand the separation of all these things. But that's probably why I want to write philosophy and literature, because there's no one definition of either one of them.